Very happy to be here. As Robin said, I'm a Senegalese journalist and a program manager. I have traveled across Africa as a journalist and a reporter. I think I've kind of crisscrossed the entire continent except for a couple of countries. And in my travels, I have seen lots of distraction, lots of difficult situations, lots of desolation, lots of chaos, lots of tears. When working with non-African colleagues, it's very difficult for me to realize that Africa's reputation belongs to the past and sometimes very deeply entrenched in something we could call an abyss of oblivion. Sometimes Africa is a forgotten continent. When we look at TV, when we listen to the radio, when we read the newspapers, Africa. The international section will probably feature maybe something that happened with Boko Haram in Nigeria, or something like that, and then that's it. So the abyss of oblivion, that's most of the times where, unfortunately, people have made us belong to. So in a word, very often Africa is off the map of the world. Very often Africa is written off. Very often we're forgotten from serious and inclusive discussions or constructive debates. Very often that's not where we belong. I've been to many conferences where you don't see Africans, because to get a Schengen visa to go to Paris from Africa or to get a visa to come to the UK and attend a conference is a nightmare, and so Africa's not there. So with that picture, how do we celebrate Africa Day? How and where do we see hope for Africa? Well, that's what I'm going to attempt in the next 10 minutes. I want to try, and I know I will succeed because I don't want to fail. I'm going to succeed and show you that hope is there in Africa. Africa Day reminds me of the beauty of the continent I'm from. I'm originally from Senegal, from Dakar, the capital city. Beautiful continent. Flying into Freetown over Longhi Airport and to see the lush, the vegetation, spending time in North Kivu and places where people joke around saying even if you were to drop a stick, fruits would come out. Beautiful place. Very generous people. People who will get off their bed, go sleep on the floor so that you can have a bed and sleep because you're their guest. People who will have you eat before their own kids will eat because you're the guest. That's generosity. People with infectious smiles. People talk a lot about infectious diseases from Africa. Very often we forget about the infectious smiles from Africa. People with enough energy to light up the world with hope. And I'm not joking around when I say light up the world, because very often we're known as the dark continent, not because of the complexion of our skin, but because there's no electricity. It's true. We work in Africa in places where there's no electricity. But the energy we have in Africa, metaphorically or physically, is capable and enough to light up the world and bring a lot of hope. So, hope in the countries I've visited is not an elusive concept. It's real. It's real people who every single day, on a daily basis, are doing things so they can be happier. That's where we see the hope. People who every single day get up, wake up, get out of bed, hit the road, because they gotta make things better for themselves, for the kids, in Senegal we call it social support or family support. My salary when I worked in Senegal wasn't for me. I know that. Everybody knows that. My salary, if I'm lucky, I can pay my rent and have a little bit to eat. The rest of it goes to the government in taxes, and the third part is for friends and family. Everybody from Africa here knows the situation. Today, when I go back to Africa, I have friends that I went to school with who are unemployed. And they come to me and say, man, you know what? I don't have any light at home. What happened? I couldn't pay my bill. These are friends I grew up with. These are friends I grew up messing around with. They can't come to me telling me things that, and I will just turn the other way. So it's that sense of solidarity that our parents somehow, I don't know what kind of magical trick they used, somehow injected in us, where solidarity is what keeps you going no matter what. There is hope. So, not an elusive concept. Every day people want to move forward. Every day people want to be happier. Every day we see very talented, very dedicated, very passionate professionals from Africa. I'm going to say this again. Professionals from Africa. 6 years ago, I was a program manager for a peace initiative funded by the US State Department. We had a conference in Dakar. We hired some multimedia geeks from Dakar who started filming and doing all these things online at 9. At 10:30, coffee break. We go to the coffee break. 15 minutes later, we come back. They already had put everything they recorded online, and our partners from the US State Department from Washington, D.C. were able at night, right there live, to watch what we were doing an hour ago. This is being done in Africa. They couldn't believe us. So when I say young, very talented professionals, you find them all over Africa. It doesn't matter what people want to say about unemployment or people from Africa not being employable. People are doing things without exposure. The media don't talk about it. I know because I'm from Trinidad. I will speak about 3 cases, very briefly, 3 cases of media professionals and practitioners that I've met recently in my trips to Africa. I will talk about a program called Femmes Africa Moderne. I will talk about Africa Diaspora and about Umoja FM, a community radio station. Femmes Africaines Modernes, which means Modern African Women, is a very popular monthly show, a TV show in Dakar. It's in Senegal. It's hosted and produced by a very talented young woman called Nina Penda Faye. She's a young Senegalese journalist, trained as a journalist in Senegal and in France. She worked with various radio stations. She eventually became station manager of a Pan-African radio station. And today she's producing and hosting Femmes Africaines Modernes, women, African women, modern African women. What she does on the show is she invites women doing meaningful things, things that go unnoticed. She speaks with women who redefine the paradigms of development as we know it today. Because these are women who talk about work, who talk about themselves as autonomous economic practitioners. That's the kind of things they talk about. These are women who talk about eradication of poverty. These are women who talk about discrimination. These are women who talk about great income generating activities. On the show, they also talk about issues such as equal pay with equal qualification. These are women who talk about access to decision-making policies and participation in elaboration of national policies. People who are talking about access to funding, financing, and banking systems. These are women who talk about ownership of land, etc., etc. Those are the kind of things they talk about. It's not just having a show to come in and say trivial things. No, these are real debates led by women, talked about by women. Whether they are farmers, engineers, MPs, she's had truck drivers, women who are truck drivers on the show, professors, batik and tie-dye practitioners. They all have something to say. And the TV show highlights their work and the impact it has on their community. Not necessarily in Dakar, the capital city, but also in the rural zones. These are women who refuse to be bullied because they have something to say and something to do. These are women who refuse to be ignored. And these are women who refuse to be exploited. They call themselves entrepreneurs because they have a business, they run a business, and they're successful in what they do, and they're supporting not just their families, but their community. Their message is very clear. Challenges are made to be taken and dealt with. Simple. Success for them is waiting for those who are courageous, those who trust, who have trust in themselves, and who are determined to make the community better. They don't see their improvement alone. They see that they will succeed once the community succeeds. They think that they will succeed once they're capable of opening schools, once they're capable of sending kids to school, once they're capable of seeing kids succeed. Then they see their own success. I think hope is right there. The second example I would like to very briefly talk about is Umoja FM. This is a radio station where I was lucky enough to train some journalists and reporters last year. Umoja FM is what is called the Triangle of Death, and it's in the Democratic Republic of the Congo's North Kivu area. This is where, at least in the last 3 years, people have been victims of execution, deliberate killing, widespread and systematic torture, rape, looting, extortion, the list goes on. The brilliant staff at Umoja FM have the courage to help the population be in charge of their community. So what they're doing is they're running programs. They have cultural programs, they also run news bulletins. The news bulletins come in all the different languages that are spoken in the community. I think it's like 6 or 7 different languages. So imagine the effort of translating the news bulletin in 6 or 7 languages in that community so that everybody understands what's going on. Sorry. They produce interactive shows. They produce call-in shows. They have issues, very, very difficult issues, very painful issues. I can name one: consumption of alcohol, being in a polygamous relationship, sending kids to school. So very, very difficult topics. And they allow people to call in and share their views. I think that's hope, because people are able to talk about their community. The interactive shows are based on controversial topics. I'm still getting the report every month. They're kind enough to send me the report of what they're doing. This month, they were dealing with alcohol coming in from Uganda. Because they're at the border, they're the last town, they're the last village before the Ugandan border, in Nobili. That alcohol is not good. It kills you. It's bad. It's being consumed widely in the village. They did a radio show where they went out to a few illegal bars, interviewed people, came back on the air, broadcast what they recorded, and asked people to call in so they could talk about what's happening in the community with this alcohol. That's where hope is. The station, though, faces challenges that are impossible to describe. Spent 10 days there. Every single day was packed with challenges you can't even start imagining. When it rains in that area, it's not the little spitting that I'm used to in Senegal. This is thunderstorms. This is lightning and thunder. When it rains, you cannot get on the microphone and you can't talk because it's too loud. It's way too loud. So all they can do is do something that's music or something they recorded. Lightning destroys the antenna every so often. The cables go, burn that. When thunder hits the cabin, that's the station, shakes. They don't have electricity to run their equipment. They have a generator, it's a small generator. The generator needs fuel. They don't always have fuel because they can't buy the fuel. Because their income generating activities that they have sometimes do not yield the profit they want to have. So sometimes they're not on the air. Or sometimes the generator breaks. You have to wait for the mechanic who's in the next village to have free time to come and take a look at what's happening and say, oh, maybe you need a spare part. That spare part is going to have to come from Bujumbura or something in Uganda. And still, any opportunity these guys have to be on the air and talk to their community and listen to the community, they're right there in front of the mic taking care of business. That is hope. For me, that is hope. That is making a difference. That is giving the community an avenue to talk about controversial things within the community and not be scared to confront each other and say, this is us, this is our community, we're going to have to talk about it.